What's the family tea that you found out once you got older? I'll go first. So, growing up, I always knew that my grandmother would lie about what year she was born, right? And I would always ask my mother, like, why she would do that. And my mother would tell me she went to jail for a friend. It wasn't until I was 17 years old that I found out my grandmother went to jail for running a back alley schmortion clinic during the Roe v. Wade era. So when I say there ain't no bitch in my blood, there really ain't no bitch in my blood. And I'll remind y'all that making schmortions illegal will only take away access to safe schmortions.
While my grandmother was on her deathbed, I helped my mom write letters to our family in France and Germany in French, because I can speak French, to inform them of my grandmother's prognosis and that she would likely be passing away soon. When we wrote those letters, we also asked some genealogy questions because we are trying to work on our family tree. One of the responses we got back was from my mom's uncle, so my great uncle, and he included a family tree that included another position for a sister on my mom's direct family line. It was a woman named Bernadette. My mom had grown up always being told that Bernadette was her adopted aunt. What we actually found out was that my grandmother had had Bernadette out of wedlock when she was 19 years old. And Bernadette was in fact my mother's oldest sibling and her oldest sister. We don't know who her father is.
3 years ago, my cousin and I found out we have extended family in Vietnam. This came as a surprise to us as our family is Filipino and Chamorro. Chamorro is native to the Mariana Islands, including Guam, where our granddad is from. Turns out, Granddad had an affair when he was stationed in Vietnam, ended up having a child, which none of us knew about until 3 years ago as he was about to pass. And they contacted us asking to do some paperwork so that our cousin in Vietnam could come to the US. Granddad refused to acknowledge us for a while, eventually confessed to my cousin, didn't talk to me about it because it's not a lady's business and I'm the child of the family. And yeah, he died before we finished the paperwork. My grandma still doesn't know.
What's the family tea that you found out once you got older?
This man right here is my abuelito. We call him Pops. His name is Joe Salas. And when I grew up, I learned that my grandpa was a hitman. Basically, the 11th Alderman of Chicago at the time was Edward Oliak, and a very powerful socialite hired my grandfather, Joe Salas, to go and kill this person. So my pops went down to Florida, dressed up as an old lady, and shot the wrong person. Now the real tea is that he was supposed to spend life in prison, but being a local one iron worker by trade, he negotiated with the warden and welded dumpsters for the prison and sold them outsourced contract, and each time he sold them it knocked time off, so he ultimately got lesser time. And that's just him. My dad and the rest of my family, even more crazy. Prison titties and all. Like for a
This is some extra dark tea. I don't know if you're ready for it. When I was, I think, 18, I met up with my dad, not the person who raised me, and we were sitting at the DMV. I was switching states. I moved from Pennsylvania to Colorado, and while we were waiting at the DMV, he let me know that it was not just his best friend who had murdered my mother. My uncle was in the car with him. My entire life, I had been hidden that fact. No idea. My uncle was in the car that killed my mother, his sister. And thank God I found out before a homicide fucking hunter came along, because could you imagine what a slap in the face that shit would have been? Definitely family tea.
So I grew up in a small town knowing that I had a half-brother, a secret half-brother that I couldn't talk about. Give you an idea about the age difference, he was born in March of 92. I was born in June of 92. My dad's a dog. He's a piece of shit. My father is a dog, but for other reasons besides this. I'm just telling you this story. So I grew up in a small town, you know, right? And I didn't know who he was. I found out my senior year his name. And lo and behold, I had history class with him. We graduated the same year, the same stage. My dad watched him walk across the stage and didn't My dad's a dog. Ooh. But anyway.
Ooh, I've been waiting to share this tea for so long, and now I can finally share it. So this tea begins in 2019, and I didn't find out until this year. So when we were on vacation in 2019, my aunt's husband decided that he couldn't go because he had to work, right? So back in May, my aunt, she was like feeling it, like she felt like something was wrong, so she did a little snooping, and she found out that her husband cheated on her with her son's girlfriend. Fast forward to last month, this dude was stalking my aunt, like whoever she called, he would call right after the phone end. Or if she texted someone, he would text them. Like, I was there while my mom was like, I was talking to my mom, and my mom had just hung up with my aunt, right? And her husband texted her, "Hey, cutie." Ugh. I'm not even surprised he cheated. He cheated on his first wife, had a secret love child with this other woman, and also my aunt also found out about that too a few years back too. So once a cheater, always a cheater. Bye, Alex. Sayonara. We don't need you.
My boyfriend keeps telling me that I should write a book about my family history because it goes so crazy and there's so many conspiracies about what really happened and who's really my family. Anyway, let me go in. So it's the 1980s, and let's say that this woman is called Yolanda, and she decides to go to Miami, Florida for spring break. Yolanda meets two different men who she falls for. She's having a great time with them. Let's call them Jesus and Judas. I don't know much about Jesus, but Judas, all we do know is that he has a whole family in Colombia, kids and a wife. But it didn't stop Judas from having a good time in Florida either. Now what I'm assuming is a month post Florida, Yolanda finds out she's pregnant. And she told Judas, you know what? It's your kid. I don't know what to tell you. So now I have Judas's last name, but I don't think Judas is my grandpa.
That weird family secret that you didn't know about till you were older. I'll go first. So growing up, it was just me and my mom, and I really didn't know my birth dad. About 3 years ago, I got a Facebook message from a lady who claimed to be my babysitter from when I was really little. She was getting in touch with me to let me know I had a sister. Turns out my birth dad had knocked up my babysitter, who was of age, and secretly had a child with her that they had put up for adoption. My sister had known about me my entire life, and I had no clue she even existed. To say my mom was shocked was an understatement. My sister was just scared to tell me that she existed and knew I had no idea. She's a nurse in Tennessee and was adopted by a wonderful family and knows her birth mom and has met our birth dad but wasn't a fan. Takes a special kind of man to keep a whole other child a secret. But I got a pretty cool sister out of it, so not too bad.
Did anyone else take an Ancestry DNA test and accidentally uncover a family secret?
Yep. I was the first out of my immediate family to take the test a couple years ago. I find out that I have a few cousins and great aunts and uncles. These great aunts and uncles are ones that I had never met. One of them reaches out to me and asks me if Lois is my grandmother. Why, yes, Lois is my grandmother. She tells me that she's Lois's half-sister. Apparently, my great-grandfather hooked up with two other women while he was married to my great-grandmother. They were married for, a million years. And with those two women, he fathered some children. So I had to be the one to tell my Nana that her dad was kind of a hoe. She ended up meeting her siblings, and it was adorable. And a funny thing about where I'm from, Rhode Island is really small. And my dad found out that working alongside one of his uncles for years and had no idea.
Ooh, this is my time to shine. So I know everyone in my extended family. I know my cousins and their kids. I know my parents' cousins and their kids. I know my first cousins once removed, my second cousins. I know the difference between the two. I could draw you a family tree like that. So we took the ancestry test just for fun, and when the results came back, this huge list of people that we didn't know showed up that were our second cousins, 8% related to us. Not 0.05, well, fifth cousin. No, really related to us. Got in touch with all of them, did some sleuthing. Turns out they were all from my grandfather's hometown. Did more digging, went through their family trees. Turns out my grandfather had 5 extra children with 5 different women out of wedlock that we didn't know about. And that is just people that were on Ancestry DNA looking for their father or grandfather. We have no idea how many other children he had that we just don't know about.
Why, actually, yes. So let's go back in time to when I was a little girl. I would always hear secrets about how my father wasn't my real father. Unfortunately, I lost my mom around that time. And as I grew up, I lost the desire to find out who my real father was. I figured I'll never find it. So fast forward to about 2 years ago, and I got an Ancestry DNA test because the question I get most ever in my life is, what are you? And I'm like, I'm a human. Anyways, so I find out what my origins of my ancestors are, but I also find out I have a first cousin that I never met. Contact her and find out she has 7 uncles, and we had to narrow it down, finally figuring out who my father is and finding out I have a brother and 4 other sisters, and unfortunately they never knew about me.
Oh, did I? In 2018, when I was 43 years old, I took a DNA test because I was working on my family tree, and lo and behold, I had a close match. This close match lived right down the street from me, so I met with her and her mother. Her mother happened to be from England, as my mother grew up in England and my grandparents, so we thought, that's the connection. Well, we did have our mothers take the DNA test, and of course we weren't matched on that side. My father had passed away in 2012, and my mother is an only child. But I always was curious because I never looked like my dad or anyone in his family. So this close match showed me a picture of her father, who she hadn't talked to in quite a while. And I looked exactly like him. Turns out my mother forgot that she slept with a man with a wooden leg in 1970.